You are not lost, you are overstimulated. There is a strange feeling that almost everyone experiences, but very few people know how to explain. You wake up in the morning, reach for your phone, and before your feet even touch the floor, you've already seen hundreds of other people's lives. Someone got married. Someone bought a house. Someone became successful. Someone is traveling. Someone is richer than you. Someone is more attractive than you. Someone is fitter than you. Someone seems happier than you. And before your own day has even begun, you're already questioning whether you're doing enough with your life. So you search for answers. You watch videos about finding your purpose. You listen to podcasts about discipline. You read about successful people. You save motivational quotes. You download another productivity app. You make another plan. You tell yourself that tomorrow will be different. And somehow, after consuming all of that advice, you feel even more confused. You begin to wonder if something is wrong with you. Maybe you're lazy. Maybe you're behind. Maybe you have no purpose. Maybe everyone else figured life out while you were wasting yours. But what if that's not the problem? What if you're not actually lost? What if your mind is simply too crowded to hear where you want to go? Think about that. A person standing in a quiet field can hear a bird from far away. Put that same person in the middle of a crowded city, surrounded by traffic, conversations, music, advertisements, and construction, and the bird hasn't disappeared. The environment simply became louder. And perhaps that's what has happened to you. Your inner voice didn't disappear. It was buried beneath notifications, opinions, entertainment, comparison, news, short videos, other people's expectations, and an endless stream of information telling you who you should become. The frightening part is that you may not even realize how much noise you've accepted as normal. You wake up with noise. You work with noise. You eat with noise. You travel with noise. You rest with noise. And then at night, when your mind finally becomes quiet, you wonder why you're exhausted. But there is another possibility. Maybe you're not exhausted because you did too much. Maybe you're exhausted because your attention was pulled in too many directions. And this is where an ancient philosophy becomes surprisingly relevant. The Stoics lived without smartphones, social media, algorithms, or constant notifications. But they understood a problem that hasn't changed. A human being can lose control of his life without losing control of his schedule. You can be busy all day and still spend almost none of that day on what truly matters. You can consume hundreds of opinions and never develop your own. You can know what everyone else is doing and have no idea what you want to do. And you can spend years searching for yourself while constantly avoiding the silence in which you might actually find yourself. The story of Daniel. Imagine a man named Daniel. Daniel isn't lazy. That's important. He's actually trying very hard. He wakes up early. He works long hours. He listens to self-improvement podcasts on the way to work. He watches motivational videos at night. He has a notebook filled with goals. He has downloaded productivity apps. He's read books about discipline. He's watched videos about becoming financially successful. From the outside, Daniel looks like someone who is serious about improving his life. But privately, something feels wrong. Every night, Daniel feels like he failed. He works for 8 hours, but thinks he should have worked 10. He exercises, but sees someone online who looks better. He saves money, but sees someone driving a car he can't afford. He takes an evening off, then feels guilty because he believes he should have been productive. He achieves one goal, then immediately creates another. There is never a finish line. One morning, Daniel wakes up and does what he always does. He reaches for his phone. He checks his messages. Then social media. Then the news. Then a video. Then another video. Someone is talking about making money. Someone else is talking about relationships. Someone is talking about discipline. Someone is telling him that waking up at 5 a.m. will change his life. Another person says waking up at 5 a.m. is pointless. Someone says he should start a business. Someone says he should invest. Someone says he should travel. Someone says he should settle down. Someone says he needs to work harder. Someone says he needs to slow down. Daniel keeps scrolling. And suddenly, 30 minutes have disappeared. He puts the phone down. For a moment, the room is quiet. And he feels something uncomfortable. He doesn't know what he wants. He knows what everyone else wants. He knows what success looks like on the internet. He knows what a productive morning is supposed to look like. He knows what successful people supposedly do. But he doesn't know what he actually wants. And that's when Daniel realizes something. For years, he has been collecting answers to questions he never stopped to ask himself. What should I do? How should I live? What should I achieve? How should I look? How much money should I make? Who should I become? He had been searching constantly, but he had never been still long enough to listen. That night, Daniel does something simple. He puts his phone in another room. No music. No podcast. No television. No motivational speech. Just silence. At first, the silence feels unbearable. His mind immediately starts looking for something to consume. He wants to check his phone. He wants to fill the room. He wants stimulation. But he doesn't. He sits there, and eventually thoughts begin appearing. Some are uncomfortable. Some are honest. Some reveal fears he had been covering with constant entertainment. And then something happens. Underneath all the noise, he begins to notice his own thoughts. Not his friend's opinion. Not his family's expectations. Not an influencer's definition of success. His. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel isn't searching. He's listening. The problem isn't always a lack of direction. We often tell ourselves, I need to figure out what I want. I need to find my purpose. I need more motivation. I need more information. But sometimes the problem isn't a lack of information. It's an excess of it. Imagine trying to hear one person speaking to you while 50 other people are shouting advice into your ears. Would you say you need more advice? No. You need the other voices to stop. This is one of the most overlooked problems of modern life. We have more access to information than any generation before us. And yet many people feel increasingly uncertain. We can learn almost anything. But learning everything doesn't mean understanding yourself. We can see millions of lives. But seeing millions of lives can make our own feel inadequate. We can ask the internet almost any question. But not every question should be answered by the internet. Some questions have to be answered by living. What do I value? What kind of person do I want to become? What am I willing to sacrifice for? What kind of life would I still respect if nobody could see it? No search engine can answer those questions for you. And this is where Stoicism becomes useful. Not as an ancient collection of quotes, but as a way of reclaiming your attention. The Stoics understood something that modern life makes easy to forget. Your attention is not unlimited. Your energy is not unlimited. Your time is not unlimited. And yet we spend all three as if they are. We give our attention to strangers. We give our energy to arguments that don't matter. We give our time to things we won't remember a week from now. Then we complain that we don't have enough left for ourselves. The problem isn't always that life is demanding too much from you. Sometimes you are giving too much of yourself away. And once you understand that, the first change becomes obvious. You have to become selective. You have to decide what deserves access to your mind. Because not everything that demands your attention deserves it. And this brings us to the first lesson. Lesson 1, not everything deserves your attention. The Stoics placed enormous importance on distinguishing between what belongs to us and what does not. Epictetus built much of his philosophy around this distinction. Some things are within our control. Some things are outside it. Your judgments, your choices, your actions, your response, these belong to you. But other people's opinions, not completely yours. Their decisions, not yours. The past, gone. The future, uncertain. Someone else's success, not yours. Someone else's rejection, not yours. Yet look at how much mental energy we spend on things that don't belong to us. You replay conversations. You imagine what someone thinks about you. You compare your progress to someone else's. You worry about what might happen 6 months from now. You become angry because someone doesn't behave the way you wanted. And then you wonder why your mind feels exhausted. The problem isn't necessarily that you're thinking too much. You're thinking about too many things that you cannot control. So try something different. Whenever something occupies your mind, ask, is this actually mine to control? If it is, act. If it isn't, release it. Not because it doesn't matter, but because your attention is too valuable to spend where it has no power. Think about how much lighter your day would become if you stopped trying to control people's opinions. Imagine receiving criticism without immediately needing to defend yourself. Imagine someone misunderstanding you and realizing that you don't have to correct every misunderstanding. Imagine someone succeeding and being able to congratulate them without turning their success into evidence that you're failing. Imagine something going wrong and asking, what can I do now? Instead of, why did this happen to me? That is the difference between reaction and control. The world will continue doing what the world does. People will continue having opinions. Unexpected things will continue happening. But you don't have to give every event permission to occupy your mind. Lesson 2, information is not wisdom. You can watch 1,000 videos about discipline and remain undisciplined. You can read 50 books about confidence and still be afraid to speak. You can listen to hours of financial advice and never save $1. You can know exactly what you should do and still refuse to do it. Why? Because knowing and doing are different worlds. Information gives you possibilities. Action gives you experience. Experience gives you understanding. And understanding becomes wisdom when you repeatedly apply it. This is where modern self-improvement can become dangerous. You can convince yourself that you're improving simply because you're consuming information about improvement. You watch a video about waking up early. You feel motivated. For a few minutes, you imagine yourself becoming disciplined. You watch another video about money. You imagine yourself becoming wealthy. You watch another video about confidence. You imagine yourself becoming fearless. And because the imagination feels good, you mistake the feeling for progress. But nothing actually changed. Your life is still exactly where it was. The Stoics were practical. Philosophy wasn't supposed to be something you admired. It was supposed to be something you practiced. So before you consume another piece of advice, ask yourself, what am I going to change because of this? If the answer is nothing, stop consuming. Do something. One push-up is worth more than watching 10 videos about exercise if your problem is that you never move. One honest conversation is worth more than 20 videos about relations. 1 hour of focused work is worth more than another productivity lecture if you already know what needs to be done. At some point, you don't need another lesson. You need to live the lesson you already know. And this is where many people get stuck. They keep searching for the perfect strategy, the perfect routine, the perfect morning, the perfect book, the perfect motivation. But perfection becomes an excuse for postponing action. You don't need perfect conditions. You need a decision. Start badly. Start small. Start before you feel ready, because clarity often comes after action, not before it. Lesson 3. Comparison is a distorted mirror. There is something deeply unfair about comparing your life to someone else's life online. You see their success. You don't see their uncertainty. You see the vacation. You don't see the debt. You see the relationship. You don't see the arguments. You see the body. You don't see the years of training. You see the achievement. You don't see the failures that came before it. And then you compare their best moment to your ordinary day. That's not a fair comparison. It's a distorted mirror. The internet has made this problem worse because you can now compare yourself with millions of people before breakfast. And your brain isn't designed to process that. You weren't meant to wake up and immediately see the richest person in the world, the most attractive person in your city, the most successful entrepreneur, the happiest couple, the strongest athlete, and the most talented person your age. Yet that's what happens. You open your phone, and suddenly everyone seems ahead. You begin asking, why am I not there? Why haven't I achieved that? What's wrong with me? But you're comparing your behind the scenes with somebody else's edited presentation. The Stoics understood that the quality of your life could not depend entirely on external things. Because if your happiness depends on being ahead of everyone else, you have created a game you can never win. There will always be someone richer, someone younger, someone stronger, someone more attractive, someone more successful, someone further ahead. If your peace depends on being number one, peace will always be temporary. Instead, compare yourself with a much more useful person. Yourself. Are you more disciplined than you were 6 months ago? Do you react less quickly? Do you keep more promises to yourself? Are you becoming more honest, more patient, more capable, more courageous? Those are comparisons that can actually improve your life. Because the only competition that truly matters is the distance between who you are and who you are capable of becoming. And once you stop looking sideways all the time, something strange happens. You start noticing the road in front of you. Lesson 4. Learn to be bored again. This sounds simple. It isn't. Try sitting somewhere for 10 minutes without your phone. No music. No video. No scrolling. No conversation. Just you. You may discover something uncomfortable. Your mind will immediately look for an escape. You'll want to check your messages. You'll want to open an app. You'll want to hear something. You'll want to see something. You'll want to fill the silence. Why? Because you've trained your brain to expect stimulation. Every empty moment has become an opportunity to consume something. Waiting in line. Phone. Eating alone. Phone. Using the bathroom. Phone. Walking somewhere. Headphones. Feeling uncomfortable. Scroll. Feeling bored. Scroll. Feeling lonely. Scroll. And eventually, you forget what it feels like to simply exist without being entertained. That's why boredom can feel uncomfortable. But boredom isn't necessarily your enemy. Sometimes boredom is the doorway through which your own thoughts finally enter. Think about the last time you had a genuinely good idea. It probably didn't happen while you were rapidly scrolling through 5 different apps. It probably happened while walking, driving, showering, sitting alone, doing something repetitive. Your brain needs space. And if you fill every empty second, you remove that space. The Stoics understood the value of stepping away from unnecessary stimulation. Not because technology existed in their time. It didn't, but because human beings have always had distractions. The distractions were simply different. Other people's opinions, pleasure, status, arguments, entertainment, wealth, fame. The Stoic response was to periodically return inward. to examine your own mind, to separate what matters from what doesn't. So try something uncomfortable. Take a walk without headphones. Sit outside without taking a picture. Eat one meal without watching something. Stand in a queue without automatically reaching for your phone. Let yourself experience a few minutes without being entertained. You don't need to become a monk. You don't need to reject technology. You simply need to prove to yourself that you can exist without constant stimulation. Because if you cannot tolerate silence, you don't fully control your attention. And if you don't control your attention, something else will. Lesson 5. Stop asking everyone who you should become. Advice is useful, but too much advice can make you incapable of making decisions. One person tells you to start a business. Another tells you to get a stable job. Someone tells you to follow your passion. Someone else says passion doesn't matter. One person tells you to wake up at 5. Another says waking up at 5 is pointless. One person says move to another country. Another says build your life where you are. One person says get married young. Another says wait. One person says take risks. Another says protect your stability. Eventually, you're not making decisions. You're collecting opinions. And the more opinions you collect, the harder it becomes to hear your own judgment. You start living like a committee is running your life. Every decision needs approval. Every goal needs validation. Every choice needs somebody else's confirmation. And this creates a dangerous habit. You stop trusting yourself. The Stoics weren't interested in blindly following the crowd. They encouraged people to examine their impressions. Ask, is this true? Is this useful? Is this within my control? And most importantly, do I actually believe this, or did I simply hear it enough times that it started sounding true? That's a powerful question, because some of your strongest beliefs may not even be yours. They may have been installed by your environment, by your parents, by your friends, by society, by school, by the internet, by people who are living completely different lives from yours. You don't have to reject everyone's advice. That would be foolish. But you do have to develop your own judgment. Listen, learn, think, then decide. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to choose a different path. You are allowed to disappoint people. You are allowed to build a life that doesn't make sense to everyone else. Because at the end of your life, you are the one who has to live with your choices. Not the crowd. Not your followers. Not your friends. You. Lesson 6. Your actions reveal your values. People spend years trying to figure out what they value. Sometimes the answer is already visible. Look at your calendar. Look at your bank account. Look at your habits. Look at what you repeatedly choose when nobody is watching. Those things tell you what you currently value. You may say you value health. But if you consistently sacrifice sleep for entertainment, your behavior is telling another story. You may say you value your family. But if you give everyone else your attention and give your family what's left, your behavior reveals something different. You may say you want freedom. But if you constantly spend everything you earn, you're choosing something else. You may say you want success. But if you consistently choose comfort whenever something becomes difficult, your behavior is telling you that comfort currently has a higher priority. This isn't about judging yourself. It's about becoming honest. Because you can't change a life you refuse to see clearly. The Stoics emphasized examining your own life. Not obsessively, not with self-hatred, but honestly, look at what you do. Then decide whether it matches the person you claim you want to become. This is where real self-improvement begins. Not when you create a beautiful vision of your future, but when you become honest about your present. Ask yourself, what do my habits say about me? What does my schedule say I value? What does my spending say I value? What does my attention say I value? And don't judge the answer. Use it. If your actions don't match your values, you have discovered the gap. And once you can see the gap, you can begin closing it. Lesson 7. Stop treating every thought as a command. This may be one of the most important lessons. Your mind produces thoughts constantly. Some are useful. Some are meaningless. Some are based on fear. Some are based on old experiences. Some are completely wrong. But we often treat every thought as if it deserves our immediate attention. You think, I don't feel like working. And suddenly you don't work. You think, they probably hate me. And suddenly you become anxious. You think, I've already failed. And suddenly you quit. You think, I need to check my phone. And suddenly you're scrolling. But a thought isn't an instruction. A thought is simply something that appeared in your mind. You don't have to obey every thought. You can notice it, examine it, then choose what to do. Imagine someone says something rude to you. Your first thought might be, I need to respond. But do you? Not necessarily. Maybe the best response is silence. Maybe the person is having a bad day. Maybe they wanted to provoke you. Maybe responding gives them exactly what they wanted. The first impression isn't always the correct one. This is where self-control begins. Not by preventing thoughts from appearing, but by creating space between the thought and the action. That space may last only a few seconds, but those few seconds can change everything. A person insults you. You pause. A person rejects you. You pause. You feel angry. You pause. You feel like quitting. You pause. You don't automatically obey the first emotional command your mind gives you. That is strength, not the absence of emotion. The ability to choose what you do with it. Lesson 8. You don't need to find yourself every day. Modern self-improvement can turn into another form of confusion. Find yourself. Discover your purpose. Become your best self. Build your dream life. These ideas sound inspiring, but they can also create pressure. You start thinking you must constantly reinvent yourself. Maybe you're not meant to discover some perfect version of yourself. Maybe you're meant to build yourself. Slowly, through choices, through habits, through failures, through responsibility, through difficult decisions. You don't discover discipline by thinking about discipline. You become disciplined by repeatedly doing what needs to be done when you don't feel like doing it. You don't discover courage by analyzing courage. You become courageous by doing difficult things while afraid. You don't discover patience by reading about patience. You become patient when life gives you a reason to lose your temper, and you choose not to. You don't discover wisdom by collecting quotes. You develop wisdom by making mistakes and learning from them. Your identity is not just something you find. It's something you build. And that should actually make you feel relieved. Because you don't need to have everything figured out today. You only need to make today's choices consistent with the person you want to become. One decision, then another's, then another's. That's how character is built. Not in one dramatic moment, but in ordinary moments that nobody sees. And those ordinary moments are where your life is actually happening. The 7-day reset. So what do you actually do with all of this? Because knowing that you're overstimulated is one thing. Changing it is another. And you don't need to delete every app. You don't need to throw your phone away. You don't need to disappear from society. You don't need to become a monk. You don't need to wake up at 4 in the morning and completely rebuild your life overnight. In fact, trying to change everything at once might create even more noise. Start smaller. For the next 7 days, protect the beginning and ending of your day. For the first 30 minutes after waking up, don't consume other people's lives. Don't open social media. Don't check the news. Don't immediately start answering everyone. Don't begin your day by allowing hundreds of strangers to decide what you should think about. Give your mind 30 minutes before giving it to the world. Drink some water. Walk. Stretch. Write. Sit quietly. Look outside. Think about what actually needs to happen today. You don't need a perfect morning routine. You need a morning that belongs to you. Then during the day, choose one period of uninterrupted focus. Even 30 minutes. One task. One direction. No unnecessary notifications. No switching between 5 different things. No checking your phone every few minutes. Give one thing your full attention. You may discover something surprising. Your problem may not be that you don't have enough time. Your problem may be that your attention is constantly being divided. 30 minutes of focused work can sometimes accomplish more than 2 hours of distracted work. Then before you sleep, spend 10 minutes without a screen. This is important. Don't replace the phone with another form of stimulation. Let the room be quiet, and ask yourself 4 questions. What occupied my mind today? What did I give my attention to? What actually mattered? What didn't deserve my energy? Then ask one final question. What is one thing I can control tomorrow? That's it. Not 20 habits. Not a new personality. Not an impossible routine. Just one small return to yourself. Because awareness comes before control. And control comes before change. The first few days. At first, this may feel uncomfortable. You may discover that silence feels strange. You may reach for your phone without thinking. You may suddenly realize how often you check it. You may become aware of how frequently your mind jumps from one subject to another. You may even feel bored. That's okay. Don't immediately fix the boredom. Observe it. Because you're learning something important. You're discovering how dependent your attention has become on stimulation. And awareness can be uncomfortable before it becomes useful. You might also discover something else. When the noise becomes quieter, thoughts you've been avoiding may become louder. Maybe you've been unhappy with your work. Maybe you're in a relationship you know isn't right. Maybe you've been chasing a goal because someone else told you it was important. Maybe you've been afraid to admit that you're tired. Maybe you've been comparing yourself so much that you forgot what you actually wanted. Silence doesn't always make you feel better immediately. Sometimes silence tells you the truth. And that's exactly why people avoid it. Noise can distract you from problems. Silence can reveal them. But discovering a problem is not the same as creating one. Sometimes you need to see the truth before you can change it. And then something changes. After a few days, you may notice something. The world hasn't become quieter. Your phone hasn't disappeared. People are still posting. Other people are still succeeding. Problems still exist. People still have opinions. Your responsibilities are still waiting for you. But your relationship with the noise begins to change. You stop reacting to everything. You stop checking your phone every few minutes. You become less interested in proving yourself. You become more comfortable with silence. You begin noticing what actually deserves your attention. And something strange happens. You realize you weren't missing information. You were missing space. Space to think. Space to choose. Space to notice. Space to live. And that may be one of the most valuable things you can give yourself. Not more information. More space. Space to think. Think about how many important decisions are made while people are distracted. Someone is deciding whether to leave a job while scrolling through social media. Someone is thinking about their future while watching other people's success. Someone is trying to understand a relationship while asking 10 different people for advice. Someone is deciding what they want from life while consuming hundreds of opinions about what a successful life should look like. How can you hear your own judgment when everyone else is speaking? This is why solitude matters. Not loneliness. Solitude. There is a difference. Loneliness is feeling disconnected from people. Solitude is choosing to spend time with yourself. You can be surrounded by thousands of people online and still feel lonely. And you can spend an hour alone and feel more connected to yourself than you have in months. The Stoics understood the value of withdrawing inward. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself to return to his own mind. Not because the world didn't matter, but because he understood that your inner state determines how you experience the outer world. You can control your environment perfectly and still be miserable. Or you can learn to govern yourself even when your environment isn't perfect. That is a much deeper form of freedom. Back to Daniel. Remember Daniel. He didn't suddenly become rich. He didn't wake up one morning with his entire future figured out. His problems didn't disappear. He still had bills. He still had responsibilities. He still had difficult days. People still misunderstood him. Other people still succeeded. The internet didn't disappear. But something changed. Daniel stopped trying to solve his entire life at once. He stopped measuring himself against strangers. He stopped treating every thought as an emergency. He stopped filling every quiet moment with noise. He stopped asking everyone else what he should want. And slowly, his decisions became clearer. One morning, Daniel woke up. He reached toward his phone, then stopped. For the first time, he didn't feel like he was missing anything. He got out of bed. He opened the window. The room was quiet. Nothing dramatic happened. No music started playing. There was no sudden revelation. But he noticed something. He could hear birds outside. He could hear the wind. He could hear his own thoughts. And for once, he wasn't immediately trying to escape them. That small moment meant more than he realized, because he had spent years trying to find direction by looking outward. Now he was beginning to understand that direction sometimes becomes visible only when you stop running in every direction. He didn't know exactly where his life would be 5 years from now, but he knew what he needed to do today. And that was enough. The deeper Stoic lesson. Perhaps this is what we've forgotten. We live in a world that constantly tells us to look outward. Look at this person. Buy this. Watch this. Become this. Want this. Fear this. Compare yourself to this person. Follow this trend. React to this story. And somewhere inside all of that noise, you can forget that you have a mind of your own. The Stoics weren't trying to escape life. They were trying to stop being controlled by everything outside themselves. That is still relevant. You don't need to control the world. You need to stop allowing the world to control your inner life. You don't need to know what everyone thinks. You need to know what you think. You don't need to win every argument. You need to control your response. You don't need everyone to admire you. You need to respect yourself. You don't need to predict the future. You need to handle today well. And you don't need to consume every answer. Sometimes you need to sit quietly long enough to discover which questions are actually worth asking. The final question. So let me ask you something. If nobody could see your life, if there were no followers, no likes, no comments, no applause, no one to impress, no one to compare yourself with, no one to prove anything to, what would you actually want your life to look like? Think about that. Don't answer immediately, because your answer might reveal something. Maybe you've been chasing a life you don't even want. Maybe you've been trying to impress people you don't even like. Maybe you've been working toward goals that were handed to you by someone else. Maybe you've been trying to become someone because you were afraid of being nobody. Maybe you've been running so fast that you've never stopped to ask whether you're even running in the right direction. Maybe you're not behind. Maybe you're simply walking in a direction you never consciously chose. And maybe that's why you're tired. Not because you're weak, not because you're lazy, but because you're carrying expectations that were never yours. You don't have to figure everything out today. You don't need a perfect 5-year plan. You don't need another motivational video. You don't need another person telling you who to become. You may simply need a little silence. Because when the noise becomes quiet, something remarkable happens. You begin to notice what was already there. Your values, your priorities, your fears, your strengths, your responsibilities, your direction, and eventually, yourself. So before you reach for another video tonight, before you open another app, before you ask another person what you should do, stop, sit quietly, and ask yourself, if nobody was watching, what would I choose? Don't answer immediately. Let the silence work, because perhaps you're not lost. Perhaps you've simply been listening to too many voices. And perhaps finding your way forward doesn't require more noise. Perhaps it requires the courage to become quiet. The world will always be loud. The world will always be loud. People will always have opinions. There will always be someone ahead of you. There will always be another trend, another achievement, another person telling you what you should want, another person telling you what you're doing wrong, another person telling you what you need to buy, another person telling you who you need to become. You cannot silence all of them, and you don't have to. You simply need to stop giving every voice equal authority. Some opinions deserve consideration. Some deserve a polite smile. Some deserve nothing at all. That is part of maturity, learning that everything you hear does not require a reaction. Everything you see does not require an opinion. Everything you feel does not require an action. And everything that happens around you does not deserve a permanent place inside your mind. Your life is still yours. Your attention is still yours. Your choices are still yours. And every day, you get another opportunity to take them back. Not all at once. Just one decision at a time. 1 hour at a time. One quiet moment at a time. Until eventually you stop asking, where is everyone else going? And start asking, where am I going? That question changes everything. Because once you stop measuring your life against everyone else's life, you can finally start building your own. Once you stop reacting to every voice, you can hear your own. Once you stop consuming everything, you can begin creating. Once you stop trying to control everything, you can focus on what actually belongs to you. And once you stop running from silence, you may discover that silence wasn't empty. It was waiting for you. The final message. Maybe you're not lost. Maybe you're overstimulated. Maybe you don't need another answer. Maybe you don't need another answer. Maybe you need fewer voices. Maybe you don't need more motivation. Maybe you need fewer distractions. Maybe you don't need to discover some perfect version of yourself. Maybe you simply need to start keeping the promises you make to yourself. Maybe you don't need to know exactly where your life is going. Maybe you just need to take the next honest step. And perhaps that's what real clarity looks like. Not knowing everything, just knowing what matters next. So tonight, put the phone down for a few minutes. Let the room become quiet. Don't reach for another answer. Don't compare yourself. Don't ask the internet who you should become. Just sit, breathe, think, and ask yourself one question. What deserves my attention now? Then listen, because your life is being built from whatever you repeatedly give your attention to. Give it to distractions, and distractions become your life. Give it to comparison, and comparison becomes your life. Give it to fear, and fear becomes your life. But give it to what matters. And slowly, quietly, your life begins to change. You don't need to control everything. You don't need to impress everyone. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to have everything figured out. You simply need to take back ownership of your attention. Because where your attention goes, your life follows. And perhaps the greatest form of freedom in a noisy world isn't having more. It's being able to decide what deserves your attention and having the discipline to ignore everything else. If this video made you stop and think, subscribe. Not because you need another voice in your head, but because we're building something different here. A place to become calmer, more disciplined, more self-aware, harder to manipulate, and more capable of controlling the one thing that has always been yours. Your mind. Remember, you are not lost. You may simply have been listening to too many voices. And sometimes, the way forward isn't to search harder. It's to become quiet enough to hear yourself again.